Y'all ready to be history?
Get started.
Welcome.
Hi.
Hello, everyone.
To the Pro Audio Suite.
These guys are professional. They're motivated.
Thanks to TriBooth, the best vocal booth for home or on-the-road voice recording. And Austrian Audio, making passion heard. Introducing Robert Marshall from Source Elements and Someone Audio Post, Chicago. Darren Robbo Robertson from Voodoo Radio Imaging, Sydney. Tech to the VO Stars, George the Tech Whittam from LA. And me, Andrew Peters, voiceover talent and home studio guy.
Line up, learner!
Here we go.
Welcome to another Pro Audio Suite, thanks to Austrian Audio, making passion heard, and TriBooth. Don't forget the code PAP200 to get $200 off your TriBooth. Now, there was a product that Source Elements launched, would be about 4 or 5 years ago, I'm guessing.
2017, probably.
Yeah, that'd be 4 or 5 years ago.
6 years ago.
Well, we're only just into 2023.
Who's
Could have been
splitting
the
hairs?
end of 2017, the beginning of 23. It's 5. Not that I'm, splitting hairs. Thank you, George. But anyway, ISDN. I don't know how well that took off, but I'm hearing that some people are using it in a really interesting way.
Yeah, no, it took off quite well. It's the it's the last part of the Lake Mead ISDN lake to dry up. It's basically what it is a virtualized ISDN circuit. So what happened is, as different areas began phasing out or making it harder and harder to get a new ISDN circuit, move an ISDN circuit, even keep your ISDN circuit, people needed to still have ISDN. And so what we did is we would purchase an ISDN circuit for you here in Chicago, send you a box. You would plug your Zephyr or whatever ISDN box you had into our box. Our box would dial up or would connect over to the servers in Chicago and would then put you onto the ISDN network. So basically what happened is your Zephyr had no idea that we stuck the internet in between it and its ISDN line. It thought it was connected directly to it. At that time, everybody had a Chicago ISDN phone number, and they were happy because they didn't have to pay AT&T $1,000 a month anymore to have ISDN. And by the way, you can still get ISDN. We'll be providing ISDN until the year 2050. Give us a call.
Excellent. Yeah.
But the use case that you're talking about, the funny use case, is the fact that, and George, I'm sure you know this, the Zephyr Extreme is probably the greatest phone patch ever, I think.
The question is why?
Because it was
such
digital.
a good phone patch?
It was truly digital.
So what was it doing?
So because
they sold JK Audio and Telos both sold very expensive
analog
digital phone.
Those were analog.
They didn't have any digital phone hybrids?
Well, to be a true digital, a hybrid that has some sort of digital circuitry to either work with a digital phone system in the office or one that had some sort of digital circuitry to try to separate the caller and the callee. That's not a digital phone patch in the sense that the Zephyr, as is the nature of ISDN, the Zephyr made a digital phone call. The Zephyr converted the audio to digital, and then it was digital from there end to end. So there was perfect isolation between send and receive. Whereas when you look at an analog phone, it uses the same cables to send and receive. So you always have a little bit of echo. And if you realize with your phone patches, you always have a nulling feature or some way to try to minimize the echo, but you never, on a true analog phone patch, you never get rid of all the echo. It has to gate it. It has to process it to try to keep that echo gone completely. Whereas the Zephyr was digitally sending data, digitally receiving data. There was no crossing of those two paths. There was no distorting or degrading of the because it was just converted right there at the Zephyr and sent. Because really ISDN was 2 normal phone calls bonded together. All that data was bonded together to make 128 kilobits. The Zephyr is doing for the phone call, it does the true 64K, 8-bit, 8K phone call. So it's essentially as direct into the phone system as you could get, direct in and direct out, because you're really exchanging the true digital data that the phone system speaks, which is the G711 codec. That's the when you were using a Zephyr with 2 ISDN lines, you'd use MPEG-2 probably was a typical setting. But when you talk to someone on the phone, it's G711. And that is,
I see.
Yeah. And it usually gets terminated analog on the far ends. And then you get
So not only is it separating the two, the side tone from the return extremely well, it's also got more bandwidth. It's got a better codec for capturing the audio.
It's sending the actual digital conversion. So instead of sending some weak 3K analog audio signal that needs analog repeaters and has to make physical distance and is really, prone to impedance issues and those types of things, once it's converted to digital, as long as those bits arrive intact, you had exactly the audio you had. And if those bits didn't arrive, you all know what an ISDN box sounds like when it has a problem. It sounds like a turkey. Then it's either good or bad. Sort of is the nature of digital. But
so
ISDN
when you look at the Telos HX1 digital hybrid, the part that's digital about this digital hybrid is simply the fact that it has an AES in and out.
Correct. So the phone systems that would be in a radio station for a call-in? So Telos had the 8x8 and the 12x12 and a couple other ones. You could buy those with analog cards or ISDN cards.
Gotcha.
And if you trunked it with ISDN, you would have extremely good game show calls or whatever the hell you were doing, interviews.
Gotcha.
If you were doing it with an analog, it would be as high quality as it can get. But again, you're trying to null out and eliminate echo, and you're dealing with all the stuff that analog is known for being annoying for. So yeah.
So we established that the Zephyr Extreme, which was originally like a $5,000 box, makes a really good phone hybrid.
Yes.
So how is it possible that somebody could still be using one of those today to use as a phone patch?
So here's how you do it. A couple of things. First of all, also the 9202 could make a phone call but could not receive it.
Right.
The big breakthrough with the Extreme is it could make and receive a phone call.
Right.
If you want to make a phone call with the Extreme, you just basically go into the settings and you set it to answer all.
Yeah.
And then it's going to answer your phone call when it comes in. Now, your phone service has to include voice service. And if you order your if you order your ISDN line with voice service, then you've got it, because now you
all this is completely anachronistic, by the way, folks.
This is very 1980s, 90s, 2000s.
Yeah.
So then after that, if you wanted to make a phone call with your Zephyr, you'd hit dial. And then instead of hammering the phone number, you'd hit no to go down one setting. You'd hit select. Then you'd hit yes to switch it from Zephyr to phone.
Right.
And then you'd hit select again, arrow up to the space where the phone number is, dial your phone number, and now you're making a phone call with the Zephyr instead of an ISDN call.
Right.
But did you know the Zephyr had one more dialing mode?
I don't know. Maybe.
Export.
Oh, export. Yes.
You know what that was?
Well, they had a product called the Export.
Yeah.
And it didn't bond to ISDN.
Correct. So here's what the export was. Here's exactly what the export is. You want to make the highest quality phone call you can, but the other end only has an analog phone line. They don't have a digital phone line, but they do have an export. So you plug an export was like an oval looking sort of Zephyr looking box.
Yeah, I know people that bought one thinking
by
they
mistake.
were getting a cheaper, more portable Zephyr Extreme.
Right. Nope. So you'd plug an analog phone line into this thing, and then from a Zephyr, you would make an export call, which would digitize your audio, but it would make it in analog modem, like
56K baud or
56K
something.
data, and it would basically convert your audio to like 24 kilobits per second. It'd be higher quality than what the analog phone line can do in analog, because it was transmitting digital, but over modem tones.
G.722, right?
No. This was, it might have been G722. I forget. But the formatting of the call was such that the data was encoded on an analog signal, essentially.
Yeah, we used something like that for field reporting when we were doing radio, like remotes in the field. If we could not get a proper ISDN line to the venue, that's what our backup was. It was something, it wasn't the export, but it was another.
Some of the other vendors had similar type products.
Well, all this came up because somebody posted on Facebook, whichever happens every few months. Somebody says, well, I just did my last ever ISDN session, or I just finally pulled the plug on my ISDN, or the telephone company disconnected my ISDN for the last time. And somebody posted, and I figured out who it was. It's one of my clients. His name's Jeff Collins. So I'll give Jeff credit. He's in the Nashville area. He's like, I still use my Zephyr Extreme connected via the VISDN interface that you guys make as my phone patch. And I love it. I was like, dude, you win. You win. That is amazing.
That is an extreme phone patch.
But he's not the only one.
And he's not the only one, right?
He's not the only one that love their Zephyrs for that phone patch.
And just to be clear, like if somebody's out there going, I really want this bad, like I want this bad, you can get an Extreme for $50, okay?
You can get it for less than the shipping of the box itself.
The Extremes are essentially worthless to almost everyone.
They're good for holding stuff up away from moisture in a basement.
Right. Yes. And then you can reach out to Robert and he will set you up with the VISDN.
I will light that thing up.
And he'll light that sucker up and it will work and you will have God's phone patch. So
you will.
Anybody out there is really jonesing for that, we can make that happen.
Your phone patch, which is just really not being recorded anyways, can sound better than a Skype phone call, better than any, It'll be the full 64 kilobit phone patch.
Yeah.
Are you still limited to the phone bandwidth of like, what is it? 200 hertz to 3,400 hertz?
It's like 3K. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm looking at right here. Like
it's 8-bit 8K, right?
Right. 200 to 3,400 hertz.
It's uncompressed. G711 is PCM.
Right. But
it's uncompressed, but it
rolls off at 200 though. Like it doesn't extend below 200 hertz.
Well, there's two things about it. So first of all, have you ever wondered why a phone call in Europe sounds different? Like the dynamics of a phone call from Europe sounds different than the dynamics of a phone call from the United States.
Oh.
Have you ever noticed that?
Never thought about it that way.
Okay. Well, that is. I believe the way it is a phone call from Europe is more noisy but has a higher dynamic range. A phone call from the United States is more compressed.
Right.
And what's going on there is that, so 8K defines your bandwidth. Basically, Nyquist's frequency of 8K is 4K.
Right.
So you're not getting anything above 4K out of the phone call.
Right.
Done. 8-bit gives you whatever that is, 6 times 8. It gives you 48 decibels of range.
Right.
But depending on how you use those bits, you can use them logarithmically or linearly.
Okay.
To squeeze a little bit more dynamic range out of it by using them logarithmically. And that's what the phone system does.
Oh, so that's what mu-log
and A-law, exactly.
mu-log and A-law.
And if you cross them, you get distortion because it's like decoding it at the wrong, like it's scaling it wrong.
I mean, there are voice actors whose job it is to deliver audio for phone systems.
Oh, yes.
I have to do it all the time.
Yeah, and
I've done this.
All kinds of weird
yeah.
codecs. Some 16-bit, some 8-bit.
8-bit.
Some 8-bit
Mm-hmm.
ULAW.
It's usually G711 A-law or ULAW. One of those two.
And not every DAW can export those files either.
None
Twisted
of them
Wave can do a lot of them, but
Yeah,
not all of them.
Yeah, no, Wavelab can export that file, but you can't play it back.
Yeah, that's funny, huh? You can make it, but you can't play it.
Yeah. So I'd record normally in 2448 and then do the edit, play back, make sure it's still there.
But you can honestly say it's uncompressed.
Yeah.
It's just data reduced.
It's
not compressed.
It's not very much data. There's not a lot of data to compress because
there's nothing there. And it was like, I remember the first time they said, "Oh, can you save it in this format?" I'm like, "What the?" Anyway, I did, and they tried to play it back, and it's like, I can't even play this thing back.
And they're like, "Thank you very much."
Yeah.
But think about this. That is 64 kilobits per second, and you give something like Source Connect 64 kilobits per second, and it's going to make that sound 100 times better.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
1,000 times better.
Yeah. AAC or whatever.
Yeah, with AAC, it'll take that 64 kilobits and use it for every,
That's right.
every bit of data that it can soak out of it. And that's but what some other differences though is like G711 is instantaneous, very, very, very low latency.
How about Opus? Where does that fit in between those two?
Opus is basically similar to what Source Connect's using. Source Connect uses MPEG-4 from like AAC, MPEG-4 from Fraunhofer, but Opus is sort of a free codec that has similar performance. It doesn't quite go as high end, like it doesn't do high sample rates.
Isn't it much lower latency than AAC?
It's about the same. It's like 20 milliseconds.
Oh, okay.
They're very similar. Like it's just It's just a kind of a free version of something that we had to pay many, many, many hundreds of thousands of dollars for.
To license.
Yes.
From Fraunhofer?
And still do. But it is better. It's like you're splitting hairs. But Opus is very general communications based, and it is very high performance, and it's very
Opus
effective.
fails downward in terms of sound quality, right? Isn't that the problem with Opus for pro use?
Yeah, it's limited to certain bit depths.
Doesn't it fall back to like Silk or something?
Yes, it has a voice codec built in. So Opus is the dual voice and music codec.
Tangent alert.
It sort of knows when it wants to switch from one to the other, and that's its magic. It can do both. It can be a good voice and music codec. And AAC does too. Opus is possibly a little bit more efficient, but it doesn't sound quite as good.
Yeah.
And it's not as flexible. It can't do as many sample rates.
You folks on this show are listening to nothing but AAC, baby.
Yes.
No, we're listening to both. Well, you're listening to AAC through Source Connect.
Yeah.
Right,
what goes out on the product is AAC.
Yeah.
Is the high.
But right, because Source Connect now, the Chrome version, that's Opus.
Yeah.
Right, but the Source Connect application is AAC.
I think
it's AAC ELD, which is extremely low delay.
Yeah, ELD, low latency, right?
Yeah, we upgraded to that a couple of years ago.
Cool.
I think the issue with Opus, though, is if you ever had a lunch date, unfortunately, Miss Opus regrets she's unable to lunch today, madam.
And they're and the Opals are
Cole
terrible
Porter,
cars too.
For anyone that doesn't know that song.
I did not get that reference at all, but thank you for bringing that up.
There you go.
That's another one of our crazy, wild Mr. Toad's Wild Ride tangent rat hole episodes.
We even got got to mention Cole Porter.
So to bring it back, there you go. If you just want to pair your Zephyr up with your Mackie 1202, and you can still do that.
Excellent.
And live the glory days.
All right, I'll get the soldering iron out now and start working on that.
Well, if you have an Apollo twin with line outs, boom. You can line out into that sucker and have the world's best one patch.
Uh-oh, here comes another George fix of the Apollo. Time to run.
Well, that was fun. Is it over?
The Pro Audio Suite, with thanks to Tribooth and Austrian Audio, recorded using Source Connect, edited by Andrew Peters and mixed by Voodoo Radio Imaging, with tech support from George the Tech Whittam. Don't forget to subscribe to the show and join in the conversation on our Facebook group. To leave a comment, suggest a topic, or just say g'day, drop us a note at our website, theproaudiosuite.com.